You will never hear a moderate Muslim say to a Faisal Shahzad who's thinking about committing some act of jihadism is that, look, bro, remember that in the last 5 years alone, more Muslims have been killed, maimed, tortured, imprisoned by the likes of Al-Qaeda than by any foreign imperial power. You have the luxury of being able to walk away from Detroit 2 hours from now. We don't. Islam began as a religion of justice, but it has since become corrupted into an ideology of fear.
Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Ayaan, in your book, one of the things you worry a lot about is Muslims in America and the growing radicalization of Islam in America. It strikes me that some of this is pretty fringe phenomena. It seems that what you describe is real, but it does not seem widespread. How worried are you? How widespread is it?
You look at someone like Faisal Shahzad. He comes into this country with a student visa. Welcome to the American dream. And he takes advantage of that. He works hard. He marries an American woman. He has 2 children. He's full of so much potential. And yet, he says, okay, this is not what I want, and my loyalty is more to Islam, my loyalty is more to jihad, Islamism, than it is to the American Constitution, and he acts on it. And he's not the only one.
We know about this. This is the utter bankruptcy of moderate Muslims. Okay, what you will never hear a moderate Muslim say to a Faisal Shahzad who's thinking about committing some act of jihadism is that, look, bro, remember that in the last 5 years alone, Al-Qaeda, okay, has, more Muslims have been killed, maimed, tortured, imprisoned by the likes of Al-Qaeda than by any foreign imperial power. So that if you really want to be true to your community, you don't do it through acts of jihadism. You don't do it by joining the Pakistani Taliban or being an agent for them on American soil. You do it by speaking out against abuse of power within your religion. This is what you will never hear moderate Muslims say.
But what about this issue of how common is, how widespread are the Faisal Shahzads? I still maintain that what you're describing is not a widespread phenomenon. If you look at American Muslim communities, yes, you can find the occasional Faisal Shahzad. But look, it's been 10 years since 9/11. Not only have you not found, has there not been a second attack, there haven't been a lot of plots. So I do think it's fair to say that the Americans are doing something right with the assimilation and integration of their Muslim populations compared with France or Northern Europe, where you go and you see these people in horrible ghettos, totally isolated from the mainstream public, and they are in many ways backward and reactionary, those communities. But there's certainly something that is happening where these communities are not integrating them.
I agree with you and I disagree with you. I agree with you in that the number of young men and women who have been indoctrinated to the level of Faisal Shahzad that they actually want to act, that number is small.
In America?
Everywhere.
Okay.
I mean, let's be grateful. Of the 1.57 billion Muslims, that number is relatively small, those who actually want to act. But to come back to America, I think that even though the number of individuals who actually have reached that level that they want to kill Americans is very, very small, this number has grown. And in fact, there is a correlation, I think, between the higher the education of these individuals and the fact that they start to ask themselves the difference between right and wrong. And in that sense, America is more vulnerable than Europe.
What do you think?
Well, there's also fear that needs to be injected into this equation. And by fear, I don't mean fear of violence alone. I mean fear of dishonoring your family. And I'll give you a quick story. In 2007, my mother and I were sent by PBS to screen my documentary, Faith Without Fear. Without fear, it turns out. My mother, out of the corner of her eye, watched a small and then larger group of young Muslims gathering. And after all all of the microphones and TV cameras had gone, this now large group of young Muslims came over to me and my mother, and they said to her, Mrs. Manji, thank you for supporting Irshad. And my mother looked at them quizzically and said, well, I really appreciate that, but why didn't you say that earlier when you could have basically broadcast that message to others who would be watching, and they'd know that they're not alone. And they looked at each other sheepishly, and then they said, you don't understand. You have the luxury of being able to walk away from Detroit 2 hours from now. We don't, and we cannot be accused of dishonoring our families. These are children of the First Amendment. Where are the moderates going wrong?
This moment reveals the invisible prison that prevents moderate Muslim voices from speaking out. When young Muslims say, you have the luxury of walking away, we don't, that's the real problem. It's not just fear of violence, it's fear of social exile from their own families and communities. This explains why moderate Muslims stay silent while radicals dominate the conversation. They're trapped between Western values they may believe in and family honor they can't afford to lose. Meanwhile, as both women point out, Saudi-funded radical groups face no competition in American mosques. The moderates are silenced by family pressure while extremists are amplified by foreign money. This is how radicalization wins. Not through force, but through strategic silence of opposition voices. Let's continue watching.
And I think one of the reasons why they're afraid is because of da'wah, proselytization, ongoing proselytization from the Islamic Brotherhood through using resources.
These are radical groups often funded by the Saudis.
By the Saudis. And that activity, that is, I think, what most Americans are oblivious to, because it's not yet violent. And they should absolutely not be afraid. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And there is no competition with it. And the only way to break it, I think, is to target the same groups, but with a different message, telling them exactly why jihadism is bad, why Islamism is bad, and why something else might be better, and exercise in critical thinking.
Yep.
But if we do that now, you and I, and probably you, will all be accused of being Islamophobes.
But so what?
Xenophobes.
Let us be accused.
That's
life. You know, those are the games that people play.
Against you, and I merely have a couple of fatwas, so I'm doing pretty well. We have to end this discussion. I have to confess, maybe it's the American in me, but I remain more optimistic and thinking that these trends are marginal.
I'm optimistic, but my optimism lies in finding answers outside of Islam. Yours lies in finding answers within Islam. And I think the best strategy is to apply both, not just one.
I have faith.
The demography is large.
I have faith.
Well, I have faith, but I have faith in human reason. I think more than I do in
I just have faith that it could be
articles.
reconciled with Islamic practice.
You, in this book, consider yourself a success for having made this journey from Islam to America, but your family considers you a failure. Do they consider you a failure because you have rejected Islam or because you have come to America?
They consider me a failure because I've rejected Islam, and in my father's view, my mother's view, my brother and my half-sister's views, I risk hell. They think that I'm a failure because my hereafter is bankrupt. I haven't invested in it. I've invested on life on earth. And I think that is the main difference, in my view, between Islam and America. The creed of America is life now, invest now here on this earth. Lengthen your life as much as you can. Stay as healthy as you possibly can. Recreate, reproduce, produce, consume. It's all about here. Islam is all about when we die, we're going to stand before God and He's going to judge us. And life as we live it now is simply a test.
Now, how is this different, though, from devout Christianity, which has always had a very elaborate conception of hell and purgatory and the hellfires of damnation?
Yeah. Well, what happened to Christianity, as you know, is it has gone through this long process, centuries long, where it was challenged from the inside and also from the outside. And it's something that Islam has missed out on. And there is something about Christianity, such as the acceptance of a hierarchy, whether it's a church hierarchy or a community hierarchy, which in Islam, anyone can just say, I'm a better Muslim than you are, This is what Scripture says.
Right.
And so then you have a
odd
constant...
in that it's the democratic or egalitarian nature of Islam that actually has promoted radicalism, because Osama bin Laden is a layperson, but he can issue pronouncements that are seen as the equal of the Grand Mufti of the Mosque of Al-Azhar in Cairo.
Yeah. I mean, look at someone like Anwar al-Awlaki. What education has he got? What kind of a clergyman? Anwar al-Awlaki is an American citizen who is now hiding in Yemen, who has inspired men like Faisal Shahzad, the guy who tried to blow up Times Square, Nidal Malik Hassan, the major in the American military, who's an American citizen who killed Americans. These are guys who read the Quran and read the Hadith and then think that they are professional enough to tell other Muslims what they can do and what they can't do, what is right and what is wrong. And that is in Nomad the reason why I came to the conclusion perhaps it's better for Muslims to move away from Islam altogether and seek a different source of morality. Those who want a God should forsake Allah and find a God like Jesus Christ. I'm not a Christian, but Christ, as he has evolved in the concept of the people who believe in him, has become this cuddly God who's all about love and paternity. And I think maybe for those Muslims, especially those who are seeking a better life coming to America, perhaps it's better for them not to just leave their home behind, but also their God behind.
Wow, where to begin? Islam began as a religion of justice, but it has since become corrupted into an ideology of fear. And it's not America, and it's not Israel that has done the corrupting. It is we Muslims who have, and therefore only we Muslims who can lead the effort to fix the problem. And Fareed, you know as well as I do, plenty of people use statements like this to say she is anti-Islam. Well, in that case, the Quran must be anti-Islam too, because it clearly states God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. This is a call to take personal responsibility without abandoning faith, no matter who's offended.
See, what strikes me about your call, Ayaan, is what is the chance that by telling 1 billion Muslims, by the way, your religion is all screwed up, and what you should really do is abandon it, and that's the path of true salvation. They're going to go and say, damn, why didn't I think of that? So, what it suggests is, if you're trying to say something provocative to bring attention to yourself, that's one thing. But are you really trying to reform the faith?
I don't think that we should lock 1.57 billion people in the world in a book that was written in the 7th century, in a moral guide that we say existed in the 7th century. Since then, humanity has evolved. More ideas have come on the counter that have been tested and tried. Why exclude Muslims from the values of liberal democracy?
But this Irshad? Well, hold on a second. I think that's
Why
actually...
lock them up in a book?
But that's the point. It's not locking us up. And my worry, my risk, or rather the worry that I have for you is that you risk minimizing the possibility that faithful Muslims can also be reformers. What ultimately worries me is that when you talk about, Christianity being a reformed religion, remember that it took, as you rightly pointed out earlier, a long time for it to get there. But if Martin Luther's predecessors had fallen for the kind of pessimism that you're talking about, they probably wouldn't have even tried and laid the seedbed for Martin Luther's ideas to then blossom.
In those days, they were probably told the Christians to convert to Islam, which by those standards was a progressive religion.
Well, they were being taught to convert to reason, or at least make use of science, reason. People were learning and people were experimenting. And that has inspired me more than anything else. Why not look at science, rational humanism, Christianity,
but you're saying, you're saying
some
the exact,
other idea.
But Ayaan, you're saying
Why
the exact
look for answers
opposite.
only in the Quran?
No, I'm not only for answers in the Quran, but you are saying that there are absolutely no answers in the Quran. In fact, I think that the dogma is there, not certainly in the kind of Islam that I'm talking about.
I read the Quran, and I don't like the things I find in there.
Okay, then you reject it, and that's entirely your right. Welcome to a pluralistic Islam.
Thank you.
But I don't mean that in any kind of a condescending way. You know that I defend your right to leave. But I am absolutely passionate about my responsibility to stay, because if I was to walk away at this point, it would feel like running away.
I think what Irshad is saying is, do you want to work through that, or do you want to tell people, look, this is all bunkum anyway, just cast it aside.
Which won't win too many Muslims over.
Live with the uncertainty that we have no idea why we're here and what's going to happen to us after we leave, which I imagine is what you believe.
I again say it's not one strategy. I agree with your strategy and with yours, and let's talk, let's persuade, let's do everything we can. But why pursue only the strategy of emancipating Muslims through reforming Islam? Why not emancipate Muslims also by introducing them? It's not either or, but also by introducing them to other moral systems.
On that note, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Irshad Manji, thank you very much.
What we just witnessed was a debate between two fundamentally different approaches to Islamic reform. And watching it over a decade later, their predictions feel eerily prophetic. Ayaan's warning about educated Muslims becoming more radical has materialized on university campuses supporting Hamas. Irshad's hope for reform from within Islam faces the same challenges she acknowledged then. Most moderates remain silent while extremists control the narrative. The question they debated, whether Islam can be reformed or must be abandoned, remains unresolved. But one thing is clear: the problems they identified have only intensified. From campus anti-Semitism to the continued influence of Saudi-funded radical groups, their warnings about the failure of moderate Muslims to effectively counter extremism have proven tragically accurate. The crisis of faith they debated has become a crisis of civilization.